Good morning. I have already downloaded my message from the first service, so I'm going to go sit down there, and you can pull it up on your app, all right? I'll come back, I'm just kidding. I have a question for you. This kind of serves a couple of purposes, just to give you a chance to maybe meet the person next to you, discuss a little bit of something. I want you to turn to your neighbor and discuss what is the top thing that you look for in a church. What is the primary characteristic that you would be looking for if you were going to join a church? Sound good? All right. Turn and discuss. There we go. All right. For those of you that said an app, welcome. For those of you that said the primary thing I'm looking for in a church is to be able to come into the auditorium and just sit by myself and not have to engage in conversation with someone, I apologize, all right? Hopefully you'll stick around for a little bit. This series that we are in, Glenn kicked it off last week, is called The Church Jesus Loves. And I want to remind us of what we mean and what Jesus means when he's talking about the church. When John recorded Jesus' reflections regarding Jesus and these letters that he wrote to 7 individual churches, we talk about the church, the Big C church, and that is comprised of followers of Jesus, people who have placed their faith and trust in Jesus, not just for forgiveness of sins, but to save them into a new way of living. We refer to it in different terms. We are disciples. We are followers of Jesus. We are Christians. We are in God's family. So there's this Big C church that we are a part of. But we're also a part of a local body, and we'll kind of refer to that as the small C church. We are Central Christian Church. Jesus had these letters written to specific small C churches, local congregations, local gatherings of people who committed to the way, who committed to follow Jesus. And the first thing that caught my attention back when we were discussing not just the content of Revelation 2 and 3, but the title for this series, the first thing that caught my attention was that Jesus does love the church. And maybe that surprises you a little bit, depending on what your church background is like. Because I know that some of you are here and you're licking some wounds. Things maybe for you when it comes to church has not always been perfect, smooth sailing. Maybe you were found just disappointed or wanting in some way. But I want to remind us that Jesus does love the church. The Bible refers to the church oftentimes as the bride of Christ. So this small C church that we're talking about, we can kind of think of ourselves as the bride of Christ. Now, as I was thinking about churches that I've been a part of and people that I know that have been a part of other churches, just thinking about the fact that Jesus loves that bride in particular kind of surprised me. And just in wrestling with this, I journaled a prayer. It was just kind of a raw, unfiltered prayer. Jesus, the church, your bride, has not aged very well. We are quite ugly at times. We cheat and can be an unfaithful bride. We dress up for others more than for you. Sometimes we open our opinionated mouths and our bad breath turns people away. Our well-tuned bands, catchy sermons, and even journal entries read in church services, little more than a fast-dissolving breath mint that masks a deeper issue of halitosis. Get it? Halitosis. Yeah. Jesus didn't laugh when I prayed that either, so you're in good company. Okay. in spite of our flaws, you do love us and see who we could become and what we could accomplish. So I just want to begin by recognizing we have different opinions of church in this very room. There are people here who do love the church. There are some of you that love the Big C church and that you really love Central Christian Church, the small C church. Some of you love this church in comparison to your last church. Some of you love the thought of trying a new church. Some of you may have experienced frustrations or deep wounds, as I said, but it's not that you don't like the church, you've just kind of learned to put up with the church. There are some who don't mind being here. You may have driven here, but it was your child that brought you here, if that makes sense. Some of you are fine with being here. You think church is okay, but it's not necessary. Some people are highly skeptical of church, and others are just downright angry with the church. And the main reason sometimes those people show up at church is so that they can justify their stance and find one more thing to support their anger. So we come from a wide spectrum. And Jesus does love the church. So what is it about the church that he loves? If we are not in love with the church, what is it that we don't see that he sees? And so really all throughout this series, it gives us an opportunity to do that. But we're going to look at two churches in particular and two amazing churches that Jesus loved. Of the 7 churches, most of them, Jesus offers a commendation as well as a critique for this church, for these two churches. I'm not saying that the churches were perfect, but in the letter that he wrote, it's just a commendation. It's just him kind of praising them for some good things. This is what I love about you. And so we're going to look at the churches of Smyrna and Philadelphia. So beginning in Revelation 2, verse 8, we're going to look at the church of Smyrna. To the angel of the church in Smyrna, write, these are the words of him who is the first and the last, who died and came to life again. I know your afflictions and your poverty, yet you are rich. I know about the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are of a synagogue of Satan. Do not be afraid of what you are about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer persecution for 10 days. Be faithful, even to the point of death, and I will give you life as your victor's crown. Whoever has ears, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. The one who is victorious will not be hurt at all by the second death. When you turned to your neighbor just a moment ago and you voiced what is the primary characteristic that you look for in a church, did anyone use these words? Affliction, poverty, testing, suffering, persecution, or martyrdom? Probably not. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that is not something that we included. We have one of the things that we do about every other week here after the services, we have this thing called Snapshot. It takes place about 5 or 10 minutes after the service. We're not doing it this week because of the congregational meeting, but we say it's who Central is in 15 minutes or less. It kind of describes our small C church. We talk a little bit about our past, and we talk about our future. And we invite you to consider what would it be like for you to be a part of our church. Can you imagine going to Smyrna's Snapshot class? After what was just described here? You walk into the class and there's a pastor. Hi, I'm a pastor here at Smyrna Church. Just want you to know we really have a lot of struggles and a lot of suffering and affliction going on here. We're running way behind budget. We are extremely poor. And then we just got this letter, and apparently things are going from bad to worse, not looking good in the days ahead. Anywho, we've got a life group brochure here. Would you like to join one of our life groups? The people who made up the Church of Smyrna, this town was a very wealthy town. Seaport town. They were primarily a town known for myrrh, the spice, the ointment myrrh. Myrrh may sound familiar to you from the Christmas story. The wise men brought 3 gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. I don't know that Mary and Joseph actually registered for myrrh, but they got myrrh. And it's particularly interesting when you know that myrrh is used as a burial ointment between the folds of cloth. It was kind of a prophetic gift. Between the folds of cloth as they wrapped up Jesus, myrrh was a spice that was used in his burial process. So I want you to kind of picture what's taken place here. There is a city that is wealthy, but there are people in a church who are poor. It could be that they were kind of ostracized from economics because of the stance that they took. And so people said, because of your stance, we're not going to do business with you. We don't really know for sure. But we just know that the people were financially poor, but they had a wealth that extended beyond this earth. And so what's taken place here, there is a city that's getting rich from burial spices that will be wrapped around Christians who are taking bold countercultural stands for Christ. Do you feel kind of the irony there? So what would Smyrna receive for their faithfulness in the face of suffering? They kept pressing forward in spite of the suffering. Last week, Glenn talked about the church of Ephesus and called us to to this love that we are to respond to, that we are called back to. And Ephesus, at one point, was known for that love. I don't know that these churches the letters were connected other than they were given as a mail carrier would probably drop them off because it forms a circle geographically as they were dropped off. But I do think that love and suffering do go together. They're connected. Can we agree that when we truly love something, we are willing to suffer for it? We are willing to make sacrifices. Apart from love, we probably cannot sustain an ongoing sacrifice of some kind. It's a good thing that we love our kids when they're young, isn't it? God gave us as a gift love, and that doesn't mean that this love is just something that's fun and it's this feeling. It is actually, it is within us a passion, which in the biblical sense is talking about suffering. If you saw the movie, The Passion of the Christ, the suffering of the Christ. And so we see that a willingness to suffer proved the genuineness of their love, especially from this church in Smyrna. We are willing to suffer for those we love, and that characterized their church. Now, there was the other church that suffered, and that's why we're looking at both of them today. It's the church of Philadelphia, and it's in Revelation 3. So let's read about that. To the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, "These are the words of him who is holy and true, who holds the key of David. What he opens, no one can shut, and what he shuts, no one can open. I know your deeds. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. I will make those of you who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews, though they are not, but are liars. I will make them come and fall down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. Since you have kept my command to endure patiently, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that is going to come on the whole world to test the inhabitants of the earth. I am coming soon. Hold on to what you have, so that no one will take your crown. The one who is victorious, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. Never again will they leave it. I will write on them the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem, which is coming down out of heaven from my God. And I will also write on them my new name. Whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches." Philadelphia, as a city, was known for several things. One of them, I thought this was kind of interesting, Philadelphia was known for its earthquakes. So to summarize this morning, we're talking about cities that are extremely wealthy and prone to earthquakes. Feel free to make your own parallels. But the way the people of Philadelphia handled that is what set them apart. It describes Philadelphia in much the same way as Smyrna. They were persecuted. That word persecuted actually means pressed. Pressed or squeezed, and they were getting it from all sides. In verse 8, this is how they were described. I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. This church was known for having little strength. Now, you would think the church that Jesus loves is this strong and powerful church. This church was known for little strength. Now, again, I don't know exactly what this means. It could be that they were small in number. It could be that those who were early on in their spiritual journey that comprised this church were of the lower class of Roman society. Therefore, they exerted very little influence. But the key point here is Jesus is saying, in spite of your weakness, in spite of little strength, you have kept my word. You have not denied my name. In spite of weakness and opposition, the Philadelphia church persisted. This is a word for those of us who think we are weak, for those of us that use some type of an excuse. Maybe you think of yourself as weak because you were young. And you're like, really, what difference can I make? I'm still a kid. Others of us are on the other end of that spectrum where we're like, I'm to the age now where I'm kind of past my prime. Really, I'm kind of weak physically. What can I do? How is this going to work out for me? Others of you might be thinking, I'm so early on in my spiritual journey. How could God use me? I'm spiritually very weak. And Jesus is saying, I love you, and I am going to do some great things. And this, in spite of our weaknesses, there are three things that I want us to see in this passage: a door, a key, and a pillar. Jesus is saying, in spite of your weakness, in spite of all this opposition, I am opening a door for you to make a difference in the world that you live in. Now, in verse 8, at the beginning, it says, I know your deeds. Jesus says, I know your deeds. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. Jesus, in seeing their deeds, saw in them a heart that wanted to continue to do good. Jesus I kind of interpret this as Jesus saw that they were faithful in some of these little things, and he saw in them a heart to continue to give what little they had, and because of that, he was going to open a door for even greater things. He knew that they were the type of people, based upon their actions, he knew they were the type of people that would act on and go through an open door. It reminds me of a time when I was behind a car in the left-hand turn lane. This was several years ago in St. Louis. And it was a real busy intersection. And I remember, I'm kind of the type person that's looking to see when my light is going to be green as I see people going across. I'm like, okay, when they stop, I'm pretty sure we're going to get a left and they're going to get a left and then we can go. And trying to figure out the timing of the lights. Long story short, it didn't happen. The traffic in front of us got to make their turn. We didn't get to make ours, and I thought that was kind of weird. And then the traffic starts going again. I realized we missed our light. And very patiently and calmly, I recognized that. Sometimes your laughter hurts, okay? No. So now I'm really paying attention, trying to figure out why. And so it goes through that whole cycle, and again, the cars in front of us get to turn. Nothing. We don't get to turn. And there's cars behind me, stacking up quite a ways behind me, so I can't back out of this turn lane. I can't go forward because there's someone right in front of me. So now I'm kind of looking around, trying to figure out what is wrong. And what I thought was this person plus 2 or 3 other cars in front of me is just this person, and then this huge gap to that thick white line that she was supposed to be at. And you've seen the cutouts in the pavement where the sensor is, that when you pull up over that sensor, it lets the light know, hey, this person's serious. They want to turn left, okay? She was nowhere near it. And And so I got out of the car and I went around and I tapped on her window because I'm thinking we're going to be here, for days if she doesn't. So I tapped on her window and I saw instantly what was going on. This lady was scared to death. This was a really major street, cars whizzing by, like 55 miles an hour was the speed limit. And so there she is, hands at 10 and 2, teeth at 12, scared to death. I tapped on the window and that scared her as well. And I said, you need to kind of inch up and trip the sensor. So I'm in front of her car, motioning her to move forward, And so finally, slowly, she moves up, and within the next day or so, we all got to turn left. And so my point of this, are we the type of church waiting for a green light, but not willing to inch towards whatever it is that we fear the most? Does Jesus look at us and say, I see your deeds. You have indicated a willingness, even an ambition and an eagerness to take advantage of little opportunities. Therefore, I am going to bust the gates wide open. I'm going to open the doors for you. I was doing a lot of reflecting on my life. When are times that I've inched up and tripped the sensor? When were times that I've stayed back out of fear? And I realized that fear has played a very paralyzing role in my life at times. There have been numerous times, portions of my life, where if God was opening the door, I was too far away to see it, or I was too scared to act on it. And just kind of as this part of reviewing my life, I realized I live in a state that was founded by pioneers. At some point in our nation's history, young history, there were people in the East who wanted whatever it was waiting for them in the West. These people were known as pioneers. But we also know that there were people that wanted what was in the West, but they got to like Missouri, Oklahoma, and they stopped. And they're not pioneers, they're called what? Settlers. My hometown, St. Louis, our slogan is, we are the gateway to the West. I grew up in a town that was primarily founded by a bunch of settlers. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily in my DNA, but I'm just realizing I got a lot of settler in me. God opens the door to pioneers. God opens the door to people who are willing to take risks. I don't think that there is anything wrong with St. Louis or even to be on the East Coast if that's where God has called you to be. But if God has called you here, you need to be a pioneer right here. God is looking for people, regardless of our strength, regardless of our age, regardless of our financial condition. He is looking for pioneers. Now, a word synonymous with pioneer is the word risk. And a word that often accompanies risk is reward. The world knows that risk and reward are characteristics of our city. Would you agree? There are people that pioneer their way to our city, knowing the risks that are involved, but with the hopes of great reward. Can we agree that people don't come to San Jose to settle? I've yet to hear somebody say, yeah, I just had way too much money back east. Didn't know what to do with it. I thought this would be just a really comfortable and relaxing place to be. This is where I'm going to settle. No, there is oftentimes a pioneering spirit that drives people to be here. But I want to suggest this. The church should be the most pioneering and risk-taking organization in Silicon Valley. Let me be a little bit more specific. I believe that Central Christian Church should be the most pioneering and risk-taking organization in all of Silicon Valley. I believe that what God has called us to should mirror what Jesus and his ragtag group of followers did in that first century. Jesus and that band of followers, those men and women who forsook everything to follow Jesus. made Elon Musk look like a guy that's building lazy boy recliners. I'm telling you, they really put themselves out there. And it wasn't that they spent their life savings in hopes that this would work out. They spent their very lives with a firm belief that this is what they needed to do. They were pioneers and risk takers. They were dreamers, fully committed to the way, and they willingly died for what, for who they believed in. I believe that our church should be among other churches in this area, and we should be known as the most pioneering and risk-taking of all people in this valley. Not only did that first century group of believers and this church at Smyrna in particular count themselves, worthy. They were open to suffering. They actually counted themselves blessed to suffer for the gospel. I wonder if they recalled the words of Jesus from what we now know as the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. I have lived portions of my life as a settler. God has called me to be a pioneer. How about you? What part of you as a settler needs to inch up a little bit more and trip the sensor and say, all right, God, if you're going to open a door, I'm going to pioneer my way through it. Are we willing to engage in this adventure of an open door? Now, my first inclination is when I do this review of my life and I think of wasted opportunities, there's in me kind of a sense of regret and kind of anger that's directed at myself. And then this kind of says, okay, I'm going to man up and go, okay, I'm not going to let any opportunities pass me by. I'm going to make the most of life. But I know really that that's just my own strength and I'm not really that strong. And that might propel me to cross the threshold through an open door, but it's not going to keep me going on the other side as things get difficult. So what is it that's going to keep me going? What compels a Jesus follower not just to cross through an open door, but to keep going even when times get tough? And I believe the clue to this is the key that's mentioned in Revelation 3:8. We remember whose key opened that door to begin with. We remember whose key opened it. These are the words of him who is holy and true, who holds the key of David. What he opens, no one can shut, and what he shuts, no one can open. So this key represents authority. This isn't a door that we have forced open. This is a door that we inched up on in spite of our fears, and God has the authority. Jesus holds the key that unlocks and opens that door, and it's based upon the authority of Christ that we walk through that door to be his ambassadors. The authority of Christ. The root word for authority is author. So you could kind of think of it this way. Jesus authored the book on opening doors. If you have an opportunity in front of you, you can step through with confidence and boldness because Jesus, nobody knows better than Jesus how to open doors, how to prop a door open and to keep a door open. He is the one who wrote the book on opening doors. Success for the Philadelphia church had nothing to do with numerical or financial strength. It was less about talent and more about trust. This is the type of church that Jesus still loves. Willing and trusting risk takers. People who, despite fear and being hard-pressed, pioneer through God-given opportunities, open doors. So what's our first action step? This might not be as active as you think, but this is what I would suggest. I want to invite you to live fully present in the moment and to pay attention. In other words, this is not a time for you to put your head down and barrel through a wall and make a door. This is a time for you to just pause and to look around and ask God to give you the eyes to see the open doors that he has presented in front of you. It involves paying attention to God's voice and learning to discern his voice as opposed to all of the other voices of this world that will be vying for our attention and affection. For about 20-something years, I've been pretty regularly journaling. I mentioned this a few weeks ago. Journaling may not be a spiritual practice that for you best serves your transformation and growth, but it has for me. And this is one way that it's helped me. When I pay attention and I hear God give directions, I find it very important to write it down. I make note of it in my journal, and later, when I'm afraid or second guessing, when I'm uncertain, I can flip back and I can be reminded that it was Jesus' key that opened that door. My journals, in that sense, sound like the clinking of jangling keys. It's a record of the doors that God has opened in his power. And it reminds me of his authority. So if I were to give you 2 action steps, I would say very simply this. It begins with paying attention. Paying attention. Is God about to turn a possibility into an opportunity? Is there something that maybe you haven't seen or you've been ignoring that he is about to fling wide open? And then keep a record of open doors. And that might be writing it down, or it could be confiding in a trusted spiritual friend. It could be sharing this with your life group. It could be huddled together with your spouse. But we will need the support of others, because when we suffer, when we grow fearful, we're going to need some encouragement and support in that. Pay attention to the doors that God has or is opening in your life. Maybe you've already identified that open door, or maybe that door is one that intimidates you so much that long ago you barricaded it in. You barricaded behind busyness and other things that blur your vision and dull your sense of purpose. I believe that Jesus gives us doors that are really closely connected to our love and the desires that he has given us, that he's placed within us. He has created us for good works. We read about that in Ephesians. And I believe that he gives us a unique love and a passion for these good works, and the open doors will coincide with those things. So let me mention examples of open doors. And I want you to listen and see if you maybe hear the sound of clanking keys, just a deep resonating with you, that maybe this is a door that God's opening. Maybe you have an open door to love and serve your family. In this season of your life, the door is wide open, and you need to throw your whole self through that door and live sacrificially, loving those closest to you. Maybe God has opened a door for a relationship, but you are paralyzed by fear and the associated risks. Maybe that relationship is someone in this room. Maybe it's someone that you're already connected with. Maybe that relationship is with Jesus himself. Maybe this is the day that you cross the threshold and say, I am going to take advantage of this open door and begin my journey with you. Maybe you have an open door at your work or with a coworker in particular. For our students, maybe you're realizing your open door is Northern Ireland. For parents of high school students, maybe your open door is to help make a way for your high school student to make their way to Northern Ireland. Maybe your open door is one that you passed through a long time ago, but because of fear, you settled or you walked back out that door. Is that door still open? Has God still got his foot in front of that saying, this is open because I want you to go back through it and I want you to endure. Stick with it. Maybe where you are right now, you don't yet see an opportunity, so you need to inch up on a possibility. You need to let God know that you will be faithful when he opens a door, being faithful in the learning and in the little things, turning a possibility into an opportunity. Your open door may lead you across town. Your open door may lead you across the pond on another continent. Your open door may look like an ordinary wardrobe closet. But when you go through that open door, you enter into this Narnian experience, this way of relating to God and seeing the world like you've never seen it before. Your open door may lead you right back to where you are right now. Right to where you are now, but with a new perspective, with a new love, with a new desire to see God use you right here and right now. Within you, there is a way to love and serve others, a way that excites you and ignites a passion in you. Related to that, your open door might be to start a new ministry. It could be to identify a ministry that matches with that passion that you have and partner with it. Something that makes your soul sing. Whatever that ministry, it won't be easy, but you're going to love it, and it's going to be worth sacrificing for. So what does God do with hesitant, fear-prone settlers like us who somehow have the courage to pioneer through open doors? God says that we who are perceived as poor and weak will be pillars in the life to come, strong pillars in heaven. Revelation 3:12, the one who is victorious, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. Never again will they leave it. I will write on them the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem, which is coming down out of heaven from my God, and I will also write on them my new name. So the door is the opportunity, the key gives us authority, and this promised pillar is what gives us security. He is saying you might see yourselves as weak now, but you are the type of person that will be a pillar in the life to come. You are the type of person that I can build heaven on as a pillar of strength. Ironically, the people who lived in fear of the threat of earthquakes were given the promise of never being shaken as pillars in heaven. What an amazing gift. The irony is beautiful. The church that Jesus loves is comprised of deeply devoted pioneers who are willing to risk everything for Jesus and his kingdom. It's a church, a group of people who courageously run towards opportunities with great confidence and trust. I want to remind you that there was no greater pioneer than Jesus himself. In Philippians 2, it kind of gives us a composite view of his pioneering, risk-taking life. He gave up everything in heaven to enter into this earth. And though he suffered, he endured, and Jesus never, ever settled. Philippians 2, beginning in verse 5, "In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross." When Jesus spoke to the churches of Smyrna and Philadelphia and said, "You are going to suffer," he spoke as one who suffered greatly. He spoke as one who suffered and endured. And he reminds us that it is his Spirit that can endure through suffering that he has placed within us as his followers. He has placed within us a pioneering spirit that will keep us going. And he is saying, remain faithful. As doors open, charge through them. Boldly go through them with the confidence that I'm going to continue with you on the other side of that door, and someday you will be with me in heaven. Do not settle. I'm going to invite the band up as we turn our thoughts towards communion, and we've kind of already hinted at that with this Philippians 2 passage. I want us to reflect on the suffering that Jesus endured on the cross for us. When we partake of the bread and the cup, it's our opportunity to remember that it was a love for us that kept him on that cross. It was his refusing to settle love that led him to carry that tree and to die on our behalf. So I'm going to ask you to just go ahead right now and bow your heads. And this is a time for you to begin reflecting on just to align your heart in a way that you can express gratitude for Jesus' work on the cross for you. You can kind of think about where you are on your spiritual journey. Are you at a place where you are ready to take part in this sacred meal? Communion is that. It's a time of remembering his suffering and his death. God the Father opened a door for a once-for-all sacrifice. And Jesus walked through that open door. And now we have an opportunity for salvation, an opportunity for a life lived like him as pioneers, walking as Jesus walked, loving as Jesus loved. Jesus, thank you. Thank you for your love for us. Thank you for never settling. And thank you for loving us. We're not a perfect bride. You're so gracious. And as we partake of this bread and this juice, we remember your great mercy and your great grace shown to us.